Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Kingsmen Sports Podcast. I am Matthew King, joined alongside Jacob Sullivan. No Luke this week. We got a lot of other stuff with high school sports state championships this week, so we are absolutely slammed. We'll have Luke back on next week to recap what's going on in the Western Eastern Conference Finals. Don't listen to Jacob. He's just bitter. we will talk about this week. We're just going to talk about baseball and football. Again, we've been trying to do a weekly football segment during the offseason. And of course, a lot of interesting stuff happening in baseball. So we're going to go ahead and start there. I think the biggest story of this week was the incident in the Bronx with the White Sox and the Yankees, the issue between Tim Anderson and Josh Donaldson, which now we know Josh Donaldson, a 1-game suspension. It also sounds like he might be going on the COVID IL as well. So not really too worried about him appealing that, it sounds like. But if you missed it, there was an incident where Josh Donaldson called Tim Anderson Jackie, referencing obviously Jackie Robinson. Now, Josh Donaldson has a history of just saying little things that just saying things that really no need for him to say, this just being the latest one. And I 100% understand where Tim Anderson's coming from, because I mean, the name Jackie Robinson is massive in the world, not even just the baseball world, in the world. He's a big deal. So, I mean, Josh Donaldson, I've never been a fan of his. I'll put that out there right away. And I've always liked Tim Anderson, but I completely understand where Tim Anderson's coming from. You know, just being called that, you wouldn't think that it's necessarily an insult, but the way that Tim Anderson plays the game, he's got that flashy style that a guy like Josh Donaldson doesn't like, and they've had issues before. So it obviously wasn't just a friendly little jab. He was trying to get under the skin, and I'm okay with Tim Anderson not being happy about it, and then Tim Anderson having a big series against the Yankees as well.
Look, I don't like pointing fingers and saying, well, I know what that guy meant when he said that. If you listen to Josh Donaldson, he said that him and Anderson used to have, a pretty good relationship, and he's made similar comments like that in better times. That being said, as a professional baseball player, you being in your place of business, your place of work, you have to have the maturity to realize how that might be received in that situation. There's been bad blood recently. There's been shoving. There's been comments made. And you can't say things like that to make the situation worse. If the atmosphere has changed, you can't just assume that your context is going to be understood. And so, worst case scenario, it was malicious. Best case scenario, it was ignorant. It was stupid. And so I honestly think a 1-game suspension is a bit lacking. I was kind of disappointed with that little bit of slap on the wrist. Now, I'm not saying I'm not ready to grab the pitchforks and the torches and label Donaldson a racist monster. He's an ass. But I'm not gonna, ban him from the league. I was a little bit disappointed with a 1-game suspension. I think this isn't the first altercation that he's been in, and he's always painted in the same light with all of his altercations. So he just needs to learn to keep his mouth shut.
You know who Josh Donaldson has always reminded me of?
Who's that?
Parkman from Major League 2. He just has that same arrogant vibe that just makes you not like the guy. I haven't liked the guy since he was back with Oakland for obvious reasons, but I mean, right. It's like he wants the spotlight on him consistently. He's always saying things that kind of are against the grain, no matter what the topic is. I mean, you go back to the spider tack with the spin rate, the crackdown on it last season. He went after a guy, Garrett Cole, who's now a teammate. He just goes after everyone. It almost seems like in his mind, it's impossible for anyone to be better than him. That's a whole different topic. But yeah, he wasn't trying to be playful, I don't think. Like you said, you can't 100% know the meaning of the words. In my opinion, it was a little bit of a jab. And I think maybe you get away with it a little bit more if there wasn't the incident the week prior between the two teams. But I mean,
Right.
when you're a New York Yankee, everything you do is going to be taken towards the negative connotations, just the view of the franchise. It's how it's going to be. I mean, we've seen Yankee fans have issues this season. We saw the issue with Stephen Kwan and Miles Straw of Cleveland. There's just a vibe around them that when anything could go either way, they're going to go the bad way. You can't just assume people are going to understand your humor.
Yeah. They aren't wanting to be your friends on the baseball field. That's for sure. And I don't think he was trying to be Tim Anderson's friend when he said that. But and even, last year, same team against the White Sox, he was John at the pitchers for he's like, it ain't sticky anymore, is it? And it's just keep your mouth shut. Play the game.
Jack Parkman, I mean, Josh Donaldson is just a real piece of work. I think that's a spot on comparison. I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but I think it's
Nope, I get it.
Spot on.
I like it.
Let's move on from that. We're going to talk about another team who's kind of taken over or been a surprise. We talked about the Angels last week. We're going to talk about the Minnesota Twins this week. I mean, they're first place in the AL Central. A lot of people thought that for them to be there, it was going to be Carlos Correa and Byron Buxton doing their thing, kind of taking over the show. But I mean, Correa really hasn't even got things going yet. He's been a little bit beat up too. Joe Ryan's been amazing. He might win Rookie of the Year. He's just been straight up dominant for the Twins. Their pitching's been really solid, and the bats are, I mean, they're average to above average. They're doing their job. That's a really fascinating team because everyone thought the White Sox were just going to roll through everyone. And if there was any competition, it was probably going to be Cleveland because of that rotation. But Minnesota right now, they look like the best team in that division.
They kind of look like a club from a baseball movie to me. Just the amount of fun they've been having. They're off to an incredible start. They're getting exciting wins, and they're just having fun. Don't get me wrong, they have had an extremely easy schedule so far. So far this year, 21 wins of theirs have come from below 500 ball teams. Out of 20, that's a big majority of their wins. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I'm not saying that they can't compete with the playoff ready teams, but that is a contributing factor. Now, that big of a hot start can do great things to a team's morale and really get them rolling. Never doubt the power of team chemistry and a team having fun together and winning together. The attitude and the faith in your brothers that can build can absolutely turn losses into wins. Plus, Byron is healthy. I mean, we said it at the beginning of the year, if he can stay healthy, he's one of the most fun guys to watch. He's being outperformed in the MVP race just because other guys are having spectacular years, but he is having an MVP caliber start to the season. So knock on everything that resembles wood that he can stay healthy and keep that up. But it's a fun team to watch. I don't see them just tanking anytime soon once they pick up their schedule to go after more difficult teams. They're doing great. They're playing amazing.
Now, with all this being said, I still think that they end up competing for a wild card because the White Sox are starting to get hot. They've already closed the gap significantly since their tough start. So I still like the White Sox to win that division, but the Twins, yeah, they're playing really solid baseball, and the strength of schedule thing, eventually, yeah, that's going to even out. But like you said, when you have that team chemistry, that camaraderie, you start believing you can beat anybody. So they go into a series with a Chicago White Sox squad. They play the Angels, the Yankees. They're going to believe that they can win because that's what they've done this season.
They've won. Good about themselves.
When the team's used to winning, it becomes contagious. And the wins just start piling on. We saw that with the Mariners late last season. They all of a sudden just started winning. They were rolling all of a sudden.
Right.
The Twins feel like they're doing that at the beginning of the year, which could build them enough of a cushion because the American League, I mean, that third wild card spot, that's going to be a very interesting race between a team like the Blue Jays, who are still pretty haven't hit their full stride yet, I guess you can say, and a team that's off to a really great start like Minnesota. That start could give them enough cushion. Again, we got to see how things play out. See if a guy like Byron Buxton can stay healthy. See what Carlos Correa does when he comes back. But I mean, they're hitting the ball really well. Polanco's doing fantastic. Gary Sanchez is hit or miss. He's hitting a lot of homers though. So it'll be really fascinating to see if this hot start can maintain, if they can maintain it, keep on rolling, or if they kind of fizzle out. But if the hot start gives them enough cushion to where they're still competitive come the trade deadline.
Definitely. I like what the owners are doing too with buying them toys for the clubhouse. You've been seeing like the videos of them banging on the gongs, and it seems like they're having fun. Yeah, they remind me of like Angels in the Outfield or any of those old school baseball movies, or the Twins, Little Big League.
It's fascinating it's fascinating what can happen when a front office believes in the team, when they give them the tools for success. Take note, Cincinnati and Oakland. Right. Just putting that vibe out there can completely turn things around. All right, now it's time to get into what's going to become a weekly segment for us for a long time. We're going to just do our Mount Rushmore of every MLB team, and who knows, we might end up doing NFL after. We're going to see how this kind of plays out. But we're going to start with the MLB. We're going to start with a young franchise in the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, before we get into it, we're just looking at their careers with this team. We talked about it. We're not going to look at anything else they did before, anything else they did after. It is just what they did with that team. For example, we used Ichiro as an example, from going from the Mariners to the Yankees to the Marlins. It just matters what he did with each of those individual teams. So with that being said, we're starting with the Tampa Bay Rays, a young team, a team that really didn't start having success until the late 2000s. And our number one guy is going to be the same. It's the first guy you think of when you think of the Tampa Bay Rays. It's going to be, for me, and I assume for you, it's going to be Evan Longoria.
Yes.
I mean, it seems like he was the first guy to really turn the view of this team around. He was the leader of the team that went to the World Series, and I believe 2008. I mean, look at his career stats with hit 270, 341, 483 slash line, first in home runs with 261, first in RBIs with 892, first in hits as well with extra base hits. He had 1,471 hits. Won Rookie of the Year in 2008, the year they went to the World Series, a 3-time All-Star, 3-time Gold Glove, leads them in almost every single category you can think of. Great defender and just a likable guy. I remember when he first came into the league, it was just like, yeah, this guy plays the game right. He plays it. He has fun. I'm glad to see he's kind of been rejuvenated in San Francisco. I mean, I don't think there's any other guy you can even look at to top this list for the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Third overall pick, absolutely tore through the minors, got that Rookie of the Year award, and just improved from there. And yeah, it had an amazing long career with the Rays. Ended up, he's still playing, can play when he's healthy, just came back and got the first hit ever against the legendary Pujols. So, I mean, you gotta love the guy.
Number 2, I think, is the only other guy who maybe even has any sort of debate, should even be looking at the top of this list. For me, in my opinion, I have Carl Crawford. Again, one of those guys you think of. He was on the team when they were not good at all, when they really, really struggled through early to mid 2000s. But I mean, he always put on a show. 297, 337, 444 slash line, 104 home runs. He wasn't a power hitter. Had 592 RBIs, though, 1,480 hits, but 409 stolen bases. That was the last guy you want on the base path. He was going to beat you. He could steal second. He could steal third. And you give him the chance, he can steal home as well. I mean, you just have to be so careful with a guy like that. Also was a 4-time All-Star, won a Gold Glove, great defender in the outfield. Wasn't quite the same after he left Tampa Bay, but man, he was very, very special when he was with the Rays.
Yeah, much to our chagrin. But I also have him at number 2. Elite hitter in his time, multi All-Star, the base running. He led the league in triples and in stolen bases on 4 different occasions. Just terrifying to have up to bat or on the base path. So, the team didn't enjoy as much success with him as with Longoria, just because they didn't have everything else kind of put together in that era. But yeah, to me, there was no question he was number 2.
And at least Crawford did get to that World Series with the team. Of course, he was shipped out, like you said, before they really became a perennial contender. But I mean, when you think of guys stealing bases, the legitimate guys that you're like, we cannot let him get on base. I mean, obviously you got the old school guys, Ricky Henderson, but
Jacoby
I mean, Carl
Ellsbury,
Crawford was the guy after the year 2000. I still don't think we've seen an elite stealer like Crawford since then. I mean, I think it went from Henderson to Crawford. That was the jump. Just unbelievable. And I beg you to go back and watch some of his highlights if you haven't. Just watch him run the bases. It is special. It's really unbelievable. I think we need more guys like that in baseball today. Let's hop to number 3. I've got my only pitcher on the list at number 3. I got the former number 1 overall pick in 2007. It's got to be David Price. I mean, he was another guy who was with the Longorias and Crawfords, and he was their ace. I mean, 3.18 ERA career, 1,065 strikeouts, 4-time All-Star, the only Tampa Bay Ray to win a Cy Young so far. Just a really, really solid pitcher. They had a good rotation back then with him. They also had James Shields, Matt Garza, but he was the guy who led the way. He was the guy you're giving the ball to in a must-win game. And as a lefty, he just was so dominant. If you look at him now coming out of the bullpen, it's not even remotely close, and he's still pretty solid coming out of the bullpen, but it's not nowhere close to where he was in the early 2010s when he was just sitting guys down constantly.
Yeah, I also have him at number 3, but being how you only said you had one pitcher, our number 4 will be different. So there's something. But yeah, David Price, like you said, Cy Young winner, club ERA record holder, best pitcher in club history. You can look back at some of the years that they made it to the playoffs, and he was the reason for that. And so you just got to give it to him.
All right, well, we're finally going to have a difference on our 4th one because you mentioned yours is a pitcher. Mine's not. I did have an honorable mention in Ben Zobrist. The reason I didn't go with Zobrist, though, is because when I think of Ben Zobrist, I don't even think of the Rays. I think of Ben Zobrist Cubs. Maybe that's just because he won a World Series there. But number 4 for me, I went Carlos Pena. Again, when you look at the numbers, they don't jump out at you. 230, 360, 483 slash line, but 163 homers, 468 RBIs, 559 hits, was an all-star, won a Gold Glove, won a Silver Slugger. When I think of Carlos Pena, I think of the Tampa Bay Rays. I mean, he was just that lefty power bat that just raked, that was able to protect Evan Longoria to some extent, because having him hit right behind, there was no easy option of the two. He wasn't there as long, only a handful of years, but I mean, Placata. I mean, that's one of the greatest sayings that Carlos Pena came up with when he hit a home run. Placata. I mean, it's just he's awesome. I love him on MLB Network, and he was a big part of that Rays squad, turning the franchise into what's now known as a winning franchise.
Yeah. I ended up going, 2 batters, 2 pitchers this time around. James Shields was the one to round it off for me. A bit shakier in efficiency than David Price. You like you said, David Price is the one that you're sending out in those must-win situations, but Shields is who you're sending out all the time. He leads in most of the accumulatives simply because he pitched non-stop. He has over 300 more innings than Price, and they had the same amount of service years in the Rays. He has 9 more complete games. He was just consistently out there on the mound, eating innings and racking up the stats. He is the team's leader in a lot of those accumulatives like strikeouts and complete games and complete game wins, you name it, just because that's what he did. And so he was my 4th pick, just because you could count on him to be out on the field all the time. And if he was out on the field, you won more often than you lost. So
there you have it, our top four. We went the same on 3 of the 4. We had Evan Longoria, Carl Crawford, and of course, David Price. You went with James Shields, number 4. I went Carlos Pena. I think with a young franchise that really didn't have much success until the last decade or so, we were going to be pretty similar. I think we touched on all the guys who you could really have. Maybe, like I said, Ben Zobrist and, of course, Matt Garza. Maybe 2 other guys you could throw in there. But for the most part, I think we did a good job of touching on all of them. Let us know what you think. Again, we'll be putting this section on our social media pages as well here in the next couple of days. Next week, we will be going to the second youngest franchise in baseball, the Arizona Diamondbacks. We'll talk about their top 4. That one might be a little bit tougher. It'll be a very interesting one. When we come back, Jacob and I took a peek at the 2022 NFL schedule, and we circled some games we are really looking forward to. We'll talk about those coming up after this on the Kingsmen.
Since 1978, Rogers Key Card and Strophe has offered their clients excellent representation in all facets of legal areas as a general practice law firm. They're serving Thurston, Lewis, Mason, Pierce, and Grace Harbor counties. Our team of professionals' focus is on personal injury, family law, criminal defense and DUIs, estate planning, corporate, business, and real estate law. You can find them at budbaylaw.com for more information.
Okay.
Welcome back to the Kingsmen Sports Podcast. Jacob, 2022 NFL schedule is out. It's been out for quite a while. We just haven't really talked about it. We've been having our focus on other things. But this week we decided we were going to break down 3 games we are most excited about here in 2022. Now, it was hard to just narrow it down to 3. So I have some honorable mentions before we even start. I have Washington at Philadelphia, week 10. Carson Wentz returned to Philly. That'll be a little fun. That was at the bottom of my honorable mention. I know you have some feelings on Carson Wentz. I also had
losses on Carson Wentz. But, you know.
I also had a couple of Green Bay games. I have them at Buffalo, week 8. I think that'll be a fun one. And of course, week 3 at Tampa Bay could be the last time we see Aaron Rodgers against Tom Brady. They might meet in the playoffs, but I have a feeling this might be the final time. And one other one that I know a lot of our Seahawks fans will be looking forward to is week 1 when Denver goes to Seattle for Monday Night Football. Russell Wilson's return to Seattle. Didn't have that quite in the top 3 because I don't know how good of a game that'll be, but the story surrounding it obviously would be right up there. So number 3, Jacob, what game do you have in your 3 slot?
Actually, you just talked about it. The Broncos at Hawks. I think a lot of Seahawk fans still have a lot of love for Wilson. And honestly, I think a lot of them wish they could have went with him in that trade. They're not too happy about where the team seems to be headed. So there's going to be a lot of feelings in that game on both sides of the ball. I think that was a really smart way for the NFL to start the season off, and I'm looking forward to it. I think it will be a better game than we think with Denver's new offense and with Seahawks' sneaky good defense. We'll see, maybe. Okay.
Broncos will win by 17 at least. Anyway, yeah, that wasn't done by accident. Of course, the NFL knew exactly what they were doing, putting that game. But you did bring up a good point. Can the 12th man be traded? Is that allowed? Or
for a while there, the Seahawks didn't own it, so they acquired it.
The home of the real 12th man.
Yeah,
we're gonna get some hate on that. Let's go. My number 3 is a Super Bowl rematch from a couple of years ago. The Kansas City Chiefs going to Tampa Bay to play the Buccaneers. Of course, and in that Super Bowl, the Buccaneers just trounced them. Teams look different now. The Chiefs, I don't think, are looked at as dominant as, of course, they have been in the last few years with Tyreek Hill gone. Of course, they bring in Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They're still a pretty dangerous offense, but I don't think they're seen as unbeatable, and I don't think Tampa Bay is viewed as unbeatable as they have been, with that defense kind of coming back down to earth last year. Of course, they dealt with some injuries. Tom Brady is still Tom Brady, but can he still be Tom Brady by the time we get to that game? So that's one I have circled that I'm really looking forward to, and I think that's going to be a phenomenal game. Let's hop on over to number 2. What do you got?
Another week 1 game. I got Bills versus Rams. I think obviously anything can happen, but this could very well be a Super Bowl preview. I mean, just 2 star-studded teams duking it out. Von Miller switching jersey colors adds a little extra spice to it. I am really excited for week 1 of NFL this year.
At number 2, I have a game that is going to be very important to me personally. I know a loyal listener, Chris Bell. Shout out Chris Bell. He's going to have his eyes on that one as a Cowboys fan. Mike McCarthy's return to Lambeau, Cowboys at Packers. I think this is going to be a very interesting game where the teams sit in the standings, because I think the Packers are still going to be the team to beat in the NFC North. I think the gap has obviously closed a little bit, and I still think the Cowboys are the team to beat in the East, although the gap has closed a little bit. So this is going to be an important game. The winner of this one would be, I think, in a good spot for probably that 3 seed. I don't think either of them will compete for the 2 or the 1 with the Rams and Bucks, but this game's going to be mightily important, especially if either of these teams have a stretch where they have those hiccups. This game here could decide if they even win their division. If you lose this one, but also had some hiccups before, you could be in a tough spot. The Eagles could win the East. The Vikings could win the North. So I think that game is going to be mighty, mighty important for both sides. And of course, beat Mike McCarthy, please. I know Aaron Rodgers and both might want to win that one more than anything else in the world.
Yeah, I actually have that coming in at my number 3. You said everything there is to say about it. I mean, that the Rodgers-McCarthy relationship was an interesting one, and I think that that's going to be really fun to see both of those teams duke it out that late in the season when everything's kind of up for grabs.
Yeah, it'll be a cold weather game in Lambeau, that's for sure. The game I have that I am most excited for is the game you just talked about, the Buffalo Bills and the Los Angeles Rams. Week 1, of course, that first game you're always fired up for regardless. Football's back. You're ready. Everyone's ready. Everyone's watching the same game. Feels like it's the most anticipated game next to the Super Bowl. And I loved what you said. This could be a Super Bowl matchup. We could get the same first game as we get the last game. The Bills, they're going to try and come out and make a statement right away. But the Rams, I mean, they're the Super Bowl champs. They're going to look to show we're still the team to beat. They did that last season, week 1. Of course, last season, week 1, they played the Bears and just looked unbelievable. I think they'll look a little bit more mortal this time because of who they're playing. But Von Miller switching sides, it'll be a little interesting. It'll be good to see him kind of get to celebrate that Super Bowl with his former teammates. But once that whistle blows, once that ball's kicked off, football's back.
It's game time.
And of course, it's a whole new season. So I think a lot of people have the countdown to that one. And there you have it. The 2022 NFL schedule. It cannot get here soon enough, especially with our Mariners just not playing very good baseball right now. So please, NFL, we're ready for you to come back. That is going to do it, though, for this episode of the Kingsmen Sports Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Again, next week, we'll talk about some new baseball topics that, of course, pop up during the week. Plus, we're going to dip our toes back into the NFL. Luke will be back to talk NBA playoffs, and we will give our second Mount Rushmore for the Arizona Diamondbacks. That is going to do it, though. We will see you next week for more of the Kingsmen Sports Podcast.